All right, it's the English and English podcast. That's Eric.
That's Brett.
All right, and we're going to get started here. Now, we will link to it in the show notes, but first up...
This video we were just watching.
A pretty hilarious video. It's a... edited the recent 9th GOP debate.
I mean, I don't know if that's even where they got all the footage. Some of that may have been from
some of the
else.
sound clips. The footage is all from it, but I think some of the sound clips might have been from others. Who knows? But they edited together to make it like a feud between Jeb and Trump specifically, where they're just calling each other.
Just a re-edit. Yeah, it's just
calling him
hilarious.
names the whole time. And
interrupting him and stuff. It's just great. It's really, it just had me rolling.
But what's funny about it and why it, like, what it brings out to me is that, like, there's genuine I'm a scolded child looks on Jeb's face.
Regardless
like,
of
regardless
the audio
of how much
this.
they doctored the audio for comedic effect, recut what people were saying.
Well, they took his worst statements and replayed them over and over again, but he did say them. You know, he
right,
did say
also,
Jeb
like,
is a mistake and a failure.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And he is, I mean.
Yeah, in many ways, yes. And but what's funny to me about the whole thing is, like, he's just obviously not suited for it. Yeb, our Mexican-loving American friend, Yeb.
Right, Yeb. With the plastic turtles.
Right, plastic toidles. I got toidles. Toidles for the toidle toys. I love toidles. Yeah, he's just like, he's like a limp.
Yeah, he's just a
limp, wet rag.
He's just a weak person when it comes to just like.
And what this brings out to me, this is what I wanted to say.
Successful, wildly successful by any normal stretch of the event.
Made more money than I'll ever touch, you know.
Yeah, like by just money and status, but he's just he doesn't have that dominance.
What goes to show to me about that, though, is that this is something, too, that people who decry Trump brings up to me in this. Is like, and this is also what happened with Ron Paul a lot. People like to point out that stuff, and you can see how it kind of doesn't matter in certain ways. Like, it matters in this case. It's being ruinous on his campaign to be showing this weakness at the time when
but
it's
not. But in and of itself, it doesn't mean...
Right, like people get hung up on these character attributes of certain people, instead of simply being like, stop looking at the man, and start looking at what cause they're championing. Do you want that cause to succeed? Then vote for them. Because...
But at the same time, if you have a weak person championing your cause, it's just not going to happen.
Well, right. But
you
I'm
need
saying...
someone who's a powerful, dominant person to get a
you
lot
do
of this
need
stuff
it,
done.
but here's the thing. In our political system, especially at this point, we just need the stuff that gets elected to be mandates for this is what the American people want.
Right.
But if you really don't have much...
somebody like Jeb had all the same belief systems as Trump or someone we wanted. If he gets in office, he's not going to have anywhere near as good of a time making that shit actually happen. Because he's a weak person.
The point is, my point is that is 100% true. But at the same time, it's one of those things. It's a what's the word? It's not a catch-22. It's a paradox.
Well, I see what you mean. Like, that in and of itself is not a reason to pick another person whose views are wrong just because they're strong.
Right.
You know, if you had someone whose views are correct, you want to choose the strongest of them. But at the same time, you need this.
This
being
is perhaps
the strong
a bad
part,
example.
Well, being a strong person is like it's mandatory. You have to be this right. But you also need. It's like a car's engine. Like
well, here's the point. It's like, this is perhaps a bad example, but what it is I see some people who get mad at Trump, or they did it Ron Paul, because one small aspect is like, oh, he said something, like Ron Paul said something against, like, the war in Iraq, and then Trump did too, or something like that. And people get mad about it, and it's like, look, I get why you are, but at the same time, do you not want the borders to be fixed?
Well, it comes down to, this is what I'd say, because I don't believe in it all, and I've talked about this before, maybe not on here, but I don't believe in the lesser of two evils argument. But I also don't believe in sitting back and waiting for someone you think is perfect. There's someone, like, of the people who meet your threshold of, like, this person acceptable, some issues are deal breakers, some I'm like, damn, I wish he thought differently on that, but it's not a deal breaker. You know
My point,
I mean?
exactly.
So it's all about deal breakers.
Right, and it's not only that, though, it's the fact that it's a hierarchy of priorities. Like, people have the wrong priorities a lot. Like, they think, like,
they single issue voters on, like, the most random shit that's not.
It doesn't matter.
And especially with somebody like a president, like, how much, like, even if you think, like, shit, I disagree with them on that. One person doesn't have the power to even make a lot of those decisions. That's what's funny about someone like Bernie Sanders is, like, he can't just enact all this shit. It's never going to happen.
But at the same time, this is that. I mean, the
administration does
with
shit.
Bernie Sanders and like Trump and like Ron Paul before him. Like I said, here's the thing. This is why I said the character of the man almost doesn't matter at this point, because it does matter, like you said, because the character of the man
in a way
means
it always
a lot.
matters.
In a way, it always matters.
Right.
But at this point in American political history, it almost doesn't matter because really, this isn't a debate about what man's going to be president. This is a debate about what direction the country will take.
Right.
And us picking quote-unquote sides is, as you can see, the way the
like
dominoes
you said,
are
it comes
falling.
down to the deal breaker type things. And at this point, like everyone always makes this is the most importantest election ever argument. But in this case, there are a couple issues that if they don't go a certain way,
there won't be in America.
There just won't be a chance for them to go that way again for 50 years.
Well, there just won't be America as we've ever known it.
Right, exactly.
Anymore.
It'll be changed. Like whether you think that's good or bad is irrelevant.
Right.
It's just that's what will happen. That's the cause and effect. And
this
so
is the
if
last
that's what
generation
you don't
to
want
save
to happen,
things,
then you need to look at what's going on.
Well, and also
make
it's a thing, like I said, like you at this point, it's to the case where we need to vote for somebody who stands for the things that will fix America in the sense of like closing the borders, stopping the runaway spending, any one of those like big ticket items, like Ron Paul was saying, I'm gonna stop runaway spending and I'm gonna fix the fraud of the financial system.
Right. Those things
so the people weren't energized by that, fine. There seem to be more energized by that. We're bringing back American business, protecting American workers, and closing the borders that Trump is running on. That's one of the other big pillars. I mean, eventually the fiscal system stuff is going to have to happen too.
Right. But there's not a person up there who is going to end fractional reserve banking.
No. But I'm saying like they may at least get us away from the debt.
Right. But that's my point. Is that like yes, I don't agree with him on that. I wish Trump believed that we would end the IRS and end fractional reserve banking.
Right.
But there's no one up there that's saying that.
Right. The last person who did, everybody ignored.
And I don't think that's which is wrong. And I don't think that's something that, as much as that's important, it's not like a deal breaker simply because it's just never going to happen.
Right. Yeah.
Because there's not even enough Americans that think that. So.
Right. Exactly.
And you can still improve without.
Back to my point, like the idea is, it's not the deal breaker thing, but it's also the case of. You've got half the population, it seems, that wants something like Bernie Sanders. A big chunk, right? And the other chunk wants something like Trump. And so the point is, at this point, those men are just riding the waves of this populist opinion. And so it's really an argument between two sides of America and what direction we're going to take.
Right.
So don't get too hung up about the aspects of the guy that you don't like.
Right.
Just recognize that at this point, it's a debate for what direction are we going to double down on the bullshit we've been doing and lose everything our country has with like Bernie Sanders. Like, it sounds all nice.
Well, it's funny because honestly, you mentioned Bernie Sanders, but I mean, Hillary's the one who's doubling down on the.
No, you're right. That's a good point.
So as retarded as he is,
he would actually be a better choice for America's future than Hillary
because he would just change it. I mean, it would be all bad, but it would at least almost like prove that it needs to be changed.
It would show some of the cracks in the system.
It would be a catalyst almost for like a rebirth of the country.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'd much rather see him because I just don't want the status quo to.
Yeah, because the status quo is the worst of all worlds. Exactly. As I think we've argued here before. Like we
sort
have
of like it's the Obamacare of everything.
Right.
Like
we've got enough socialism to make things not work, but not enough to actually get anything done.
Or to actually get free stuff.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like socialism at least gave certain free stuff away until it ran out.
Right, until it runs out. Like Obamacare
Our society
doesn't
just
even
does
give you
nothing.
that. It got more expensive and you get less of it.
Right.
And it's
you
like,
got healthcare that is more expensive,
horrible.
does
like I'm
less.
never going to vote for socialism just because it's better than that, but I mean it is a point that like he would still cause less probably long-term problems than, or he would at least the type of problems.
If you crash the system now, you can at least rebuild it.
Like I was talking to someone recently, and like if Bernie's my second choice, I'm never going to vote for him because he has deal breaker beliefs, so I would never support someone like that. But he is my second. If it's not Trump,
I would rather deal with that fallout than I would with continuation of the course.
If it's not going to
the zombie banks
to try and fix it,
else.
then just let's burn it down.
Precisely.
Burn it down.
Right, burn it down. Yeah.
Burn it down.
We either fix it. Or we burn it down.
Yeah, we're either making America great again, or we burn it down and start over.
Right, exactly. So, like, the Bernie man will help us burn it down because his own inept
because Hillary just wants to make it limp along and do whatever she can to stay
just
in
wants
power
the autocrat, oligarchical, whatever to keep going.
Now,
where they slowly bleed the people of all their wealth, versus collapsing it immediately under socialism
under
at the
just
time
like
of our
workers' revolt, Marxist revolt, which is really what it is. It's just Marxism.
Pretty much. But the good thing about that is that we don't have enough hard asses in our Marxist revolt. You know, like it's a bunch of millennial whiners. So
what you probably would see is just the power taken away from, or at least attempted to, and start things moving.
Right, like what I'm saying, like it would probably work because there'd be enough supporters for it, but it would basically force an open war of ideas.
Exactly, that's a good way of putting it.
Right,
whereas
versus
Hillary's
this shadow
more
war.
The same, which is Right. They just tell everyone what they want to hear, and they're not even... they even know that... Yeah, exactly.
Bernie would force people to take sides, and so does Trump. And that's why people hate them in the establishment, because they like it when people are too confused to pick a side.
Right. They like somebody like... Because literally, and I don't know how people like realize this and just go like, and it doesn't... We're like there are a lot of these huge companies and banks that literally give money to both candidates. I'm not talking about Bernie and Hillary. I'm talking about like Jeb and Hillary, like the Republican candidate and the Democratic candidate. So you have a huge, some of the world's biggest companies don't care
Goldman Sachs does
which
not
of those
care
two,
if it's
a Republican or a Democrat. And
Yeah.
people still pretend like that shit matters. Right. So when it comes down to it, it's not because Bernie's a Democrat. I don't even care what, it's not about Republican Democrats. Like you said, it's a war. It's at least making you choose between basic ideologies here.
Right.
And like
America
obviously you're not
had
going to agree with all
big,
these people.
quote unquote, a big discussion about what America is in a long time.
Well, because all the candidates, the Bushes and the Clintons, were both the same thing. These companies never cared which one of them wins.
Right. Yeah, they're all liberal socialist.
And even someone like Cruz, like the Vox Day put it best, like he is not the hated by the establishment character that people think. They're
playing that because it was successful for Trump, and so they're trying to siphon that off.
Not like that, but like the way he put it, which is good, was that they don't like him. Like they like Jeb. They want Jeb to win. They don't like Cruz, but they own him. Like he literally, you know what I mean? Like they don't like him, but they own him. Yeah, but they own him, so they don't care. They'll take
Same kind of thing with Rubio. They like him a little bit
more,
but they own
second
him.
choice probably, but they own him too. And he's actually like amicable to it and everything. Like Cruz, I think, is kind of just like. Bill still calls him Hillary 3.0 because he's doing it for the power and the position. He's doing it with the Republican flavor, which you could say is better or worse. It doesn't really matter. The point is that he's not doing it for the ideology, right or wrong.
Right. He's not doing it
he's just a
to make America great or defend the Constitution.
Exactly.
And it's just unfortunate that the guy who came through about defending the Constitution, nobody paid attention to.
Exactly.
Now the guy who's coming through about grassroots, homegrown, make America great.
Well,
Trump,
Rand Paul made the mistake of doing what Republicans had been doing for years and trying to.
Well, I was talking about Ron, but yeah, Rand Paul just made the mistake.
He did fine. They shut him out. He didn't have the resources.
But I mean, like he also
and
just
the
didn't have enough populist support. He had support from the higher.
I think he would have, but they shut him out. If Trump, they would have done the same thing to him if they had the ability to, because they control the media and they control the money. Which is with Ron Paul, that was enough to shut him out completely. Right. With Trump, he has his own money and he knows how to play using the media, and not to mention he's just incredibly famous.
Right.
So he literally owns parts of the media, or at least is
Trump just had his own charisma
and he's so masterful
at
it that them just trying even to shut him out. Was what they could have done is what they did to Ron Paul, which is just ignore him. Right. But too many people with the internet, especially now, it's impossible to do that. Like maybe if Ron Paul was, but he just wasn't as powerful of a personality. He's not weak in the way that Jeb was, but he's just not a powerful personality like that.
Exactly what I said. Like Trump has the advantage of his charisma and his media presence already, so that the media couldn't ignore him because he's ratings gold. Right. Whereas they could ignore. Ron Paul, even though he was ratings gold with a certain set.
Well, he's all ideas.
Right, like he was the the philosopher king versus the the loud lion,
Right, exactly.
So he appealed to people who
knew we needed real answers that were like good and everything, but that's not what the vast majority of people want.
Right, yeah, exactly.
That's not enough. That's not enough to give the people who are like still just voting by letter next to somebody's name.
Right, exactly. Or people who just don't understand complicated issues,
right, exactly.
Like to them, you talk about the Fed and the IRS, they're like, yeah, they're taxing me too much. It's like, well, yes, but that's not only what we're talking about. And then they go, you lost me.
Right, because they don't understand. Their life seems okay, except for a few things that they're worried about. And so.
It's like, here's how the system with a no gold backing, and like, huh?
Right.
Like, never mind, man.
What was it that I mentioned something about Trump before we got up here that I specifically wanted to mention?
I don't remember, but this was the next thing that came out of this video. We were talking about just politics and everything. And about the differences here again with outsiders ruling it right now, like Bernie and stuff. The second thing that is most humorous to me these days is all of the current generation of Democrat people, like the Bernie supporters, being like looking at all the shenanigans where they're literally trying to do the same things they did to Ron Paul and like shutting out
like what they're doing
Democratic
to Bernie
Party.
Sanders.
Right. And they're like, how dare they? And I'm like, wait, glad you joined reality, you dumb Democrats.
You
notice this corrupt system
when
and
they were laughing and when it was
vote rigging and everything else that's been happening.
Right.
I mean,
speaking of which,
the right people pointed it out as far back as like Bush.
That reminds me of what I was
going to
say. That reminds me of what I was going to say because it's related to that kind of. I don't even want to call it hypocrisy because they just stupid. It's just stupidity
and
just failure to realize that
it's conspiracy theory if you talk about it, but it's real once they realize it's happening to their boy.
And that's the way that for years, people like me and others have always been saying, like, because I've been against both sides of the aisle for most of the past major elections.
Yeah, since I was old enough to vote, I started to realize,
I've been over 21 or 22,
what are these fuckers
maybe,
doing? You know.
But anyways, and that's the fact that we're like, you cannot give this person these powers. You cannot give this person power to do that. I know that this is your pet project. You cannot give this office.
The difference between supporting a cause versus giving the power to just unilaterally do it to the president or something.
Executive orders and like, oh, it's great because it's so great when it's your cause. It's great. Ha, he's just pushing it through. Suck it.
Suck it, you old white men. We're bringing change.
They're coming out and being like so terrified of all the shit that Trump's going to do when he's president. I'm like, oh, wow. It's almost like we shouldn't have the president have all this crazy sort of power, isn't it? Like, we should have, like, limited it and not just let them do whatever the fuck they want. And now you're going to bitch about it because it's someone who's ideologically opposed to you. When you should have had the foresight to say, eventually someone who's ideologically opposed to me is going to get in this office, and then they'll be able to do whatever the fuck they want because we set it up this way when it was our guy. And that's so... It's shitty because I don't want that to happen. I never wanted the office to have that kind of power. And if it does, it's better when someone who's doing the right thing.
Somebody who does the right thing will get it.
But it's still terrifying.
Right.
Because I don't agree with him on everything either.
The point, but that's the problem. Like I said, we are in the stage where the only thing we can hope for is a benevolent dictator, kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we are getting a dictator either way.
It's a good way to put it. Like, we're getting someone who's going to have immense amount of powers, so we just have to make sure they're going to be the one who's going to do at least some of the right things.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's scary. And I don't like... I mean, even with someone like Trump, who because I'm not politically aligned with him very closely on all but a few major issues.
That was my whole point earlier, is that, like, I don't necessarily think Trump is the best candidate.
But like I said, we're giving someone who's going to have this power, and...
Of the people in the field, he's the only one that's actually talking about the things we need to address.
I honestly think cares about America succeeding.
Right.
Whether or not he'll be able to do it, or anything,
what it will look like,
I think he at least cares about America succeeding. Right. Bernie Sanders, he doesn't care about America succeeding as a country.
No.
He cares about class
warfare,
equality and shit like that,
addressed.
Which is still better than because at least he's trying to focus on the people as opposed to someone like Hillary Clinton who's just focused on herself and the oligarchs.
Right. Yeah, they're just they play up the socialists because they know it's a good way to butter
trying to
up
get votes. Yeah, they're just doing whatever they
don't
just
actually care.
Like I said, that's why Cruz is Clinton 2.0. He's doing his way to get the vote. She's doing her way. But it's still the same thing. They're just trying to get the votes.
They just want to get the sheep in line so they can be sheared.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they don't really care about them. Bernie Sanders cares about them. He's just wrong about what you need to do to get it done.
Right.
Trump cares about making the country great again, and he's right about a few major things that need to happen.
And that's a good thing. Like if he actually does what he's promised on things like immigration and turning back some of China's monopoly on stuff, America will be much better off.
We'll be in this, exactly.
And so even if he does some other things that aren't great, we will still survive.
Well, because there's a lot of that stuff, like the immigration and some of the financial issues that if you had like Ron Paul in there, or it's the perfect candidate, whatever you want, and they were going to do everything, they somehow have the power of the dictator to do everything else exactly the way you want it, except for those two issues, it wouldn't even matter. It wouldn't matter because the country would just be dead in 25 years.
Right, yeah. If they could do every other
like political
wish list for the Republicans, but they couldn't fix the financial system
or immigration,
we'd be dead.
It wouldn't matter. It wouldn't even matter. So that's why it wouldn't even matter. And you could probably add like the gun control to that list too.
Right, yeah.
Luckily the gun control seems like that is the one issue that they fiddle with it, but there's just too much of a culture of self-defense.
America is lucky that there's
so
too
far,
much.
But 25 years of people from other countries who don't have that culture flooding in,
right?
And it's gone too.
Well, that's why one of the reasons they've been doing it is just they can get rid of the people who have this sense of these quote unquote entitled people with this idea that they have rights.
Exactly.
Get rid of that by outbreeding them literally.
Wild stuff. So that's an interesting way to think about it. And I've always been, like I've mentioned before, I think I've done it on this podcast, where I'm just a fan of him as an of Trump as an individual.
Yeah, you mentioned it
because
one of the last two times.
Yeah, because we were talking about
a
list years
just being
ago.
A winner versus a politician.
Yeah. I mean, this was before I even ever knew that he would ever be a politician.
Right.
Just someone to follow because their mastery of just life in general and just bending the universe to their will, basically.
Right, yeah.
People like him and Arnold Schwarzenegger, who actually most of these people I don't tend to agree with politically, because when you have that mindset, you tend to be
play the game as it is.
You tend to be not only that, you just tend to be sort of authoritarian.
Yeah,
because and I was thinking about this when one of the issues that came up is this. I don't know if you've heard about this. You probably have. Apple is refusing to unencrypt this phone or break encryption of the phone from the San Bernardino shooters, which I think is awesome.
Muslim,
exactly.
But they've already done this for other people who were not Muslim. I think this is a case of
it depends, but I think maybe the company is finally making a stand. But the point is, regardless,
then in that case,
Trump has come out and I do, and I obviously support that. But Trump has come out and said this is bullshit. We need to get into this phone. And because he's a fucking terrorist, and
which I get,
issues, right? And that's what we went back to the whole benevolent dictator thing. The perfect way to run a country or something like that would be have someone who had the ultimate power and never made any poor decisions. So in some situations like that, you say, yes, obviously we need to get in here and get this because it'll fix everything. In other situations, in general, no, the government shouldn't be able to get in this.
Right.
But since you can't do that, the only way to protect rights is to never let them do it.
Right.
So with someone like Trump, he's going to try and do it, and I honestly think he'll only try to do it in situations that would be beneficial for the country, but that still scares me because that power is there for the government.
For the next person.
It doesn't really scare me with him because I don't think I really don't see somebody like him using that for general control of the American population. He's just that type of person who's this needs to happen. I'm going to fucking make it happen.
Right. He's used to being a CEO where he doesn't have to play this
like Arnold says, you have to break rules, and they're used to breaking rules. You know what I mean? And he's not doing it to trample rights, and that doesn't make it any safer.
Right, but that's exactly what you're talking about. The difficulty there is people don't understand that difference. In a perfect world, there would be a king who doesn't make bad decisions ever.
And then you wouldn't have to worry about these laws because no one's rights going to get trampled, and you still get to get the information about the terrorists.
But since we don't have any man like that in the history of the universe,
then you can't give them that power because no one is really, really like that. Right. Or even if they were in our current system, you have them for 8 years max.
Right. Yeah.
So you can't give an ultimate power for the perfect person for 8 years of the country's history,
and then hand it over to the next non-perfect person.
Exactly. Right, that's so dangerous, and that's what we've seen. And they're when their perfect little boy is up there. They're all the
forgive
power.
Every breaking of the rule, but then
they're all for it because it gets to ramrod their views through. And then now they're oh god, we can't have Trump in there. He's going to ramrod his views on us. Fucking exactly. So that's what's scary. And I honestly don't think Trump will do too many things like that are dangerous, but he could, and that's scary.
Going back to my
but anyone
point
could.
Earlier
all of them can
about
now.
This forcing the open war of ideas.
Right.
Is that's one of the reasons I'm not worried about it, because right now what we have to do is just pick the guy who's doing some of the big cannot miss things like immigration, which is
the
Trump
ones that are deal breakers, right?
The deal breakers, the ones that America will not survive if this doesn't get fixed within a generation,
right?
And then get those on, and then basically we need to, every person who considers themselves a patriot needs to be at a point where, the problem last time is people started voting for the Tea Party people. It got co-opted by the establishment, and they got in there and then did nothing Tea Party-esque.
Right, did nothing that was the original platform.
So new rule. We are voting based on, again, just like the Tea Party. We're supporting the cause, even if the man is not perfect. Who fucking cares?
Right, yeah.
We support the cause, and then if they fail to live up to the cause, they get fucking lynched.
You move up to the next one.
You move on to the next one, and you just ruin their business, shame them endlessly. You do everything
scorched earth. Yeah.
Scorched earth, we get.
It's oh well, I guess it's our guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. It's we support the cause, and if they deviate from it, you fucking lynch them. So it's just.
Destroy them.
Just destroy them. Right now.
Well, the best thing to do is just completely ignore and move on. Bam, they're done. They're nothing.
Right. Yeah, you're dead.
You're not inviting them to speeches. You're not watching their TV shows. You're not reading their websites. They're just done. They're nothing.
Trump Towers no longer gets any business.
Yeah, you ignore them.
Right.
There's
nothing.
So they're not a part of the process.
We're not willing to do that yet.
You don't even have to actively. Because he's a businessman, that's separate from his politics. You don't have to try and actively boycott him. You're done. That's it. You have no more part of the process anymore. We're moving on.
Right, but that's my whole point is basically people need to get serious about supporting the cause.
Right.
And then, like I said, those big causes that will kill us if they're not addressed.
Right, because all the other ones are important, and that's a problem. But it's sort of if the car is hurtling towards a cliff, and there's a radiator leak. Well, you've got a radiator leak on this car that's hurtling towards a cliff, and the brakes are out too. Yes, these both need to be fixed for this car to run forever. But we definitely need to fix the brakes, or none of that other shit's going to matter. It doesn't matter if the dome light's out when the brakes aren't working. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Eventually, you're right. We need to fix this. All these things have
We've got a couple problems
vehicle.
In our country that is, essentially our brakes don't work and we're about to run out of gas and there's random strangers entering our car.
Right, exactly. Climbing on board the car.
Our economy is hurtling towards debt insolvency.
And
we
you
need
got
to
like
fix
a
the
little,
brakes.
like, yeah, what about this rust patch over
Right,
here?
well,
You're like, yeah, that's a problem. We'll get to that shit.
Right,
Let's
yeah,
not
exactly.
worry about these fucking vagrants climbing on
the
board.
three things we need to deal with
gas
is getting
and the
gas,
brakes.
meaning our economy is going to be back to strength and the American
It
people
won't matter
back to
how
work.
nice of a car you are, 'cause it's
We
not
need to
going
fix the
anywhere.
brakes, meaning that we got to get rid of this out of control spending and the stuff that's just indebting everybody and everything. And we need to get rid of these randos that are just jumping in the car,
and going to wear it down.
Right, yeah. After that, we can buff the paint job.
Yeah, which is
we
still,
can argue about seating
important.
assignments.
Yeah, all that stuff's important, but it's not. It's
one
not,
of them will kill you. The other,
right.
You got some time.
Exactly,
you know, like some of them will kill you.
And not all of them ever will cause serious problems. They're just stuff that need to happen because of just morality and stuff.
Right,
you know
and also just issues of like you want to live in a better world. Right,
right, exactly. You want to have the best car possible, so we're going to try and do that. But there's no point worrying about the minor stuff that's still necessary to make the greatest car, but it's not a life or death situation.
Right. Yeah. So basically, that's like my personal theory. Like all going back, like people just need to get on with the.
And when they say, like, "Aren't you scared that Trump can do, or like that he could do this and this?" Yes, damn right, I'm scared. But it's not because of Trump. It's because that's what the office is now.
Right. Exactly. Like we are going to get a dictator.
There's no telling
Let's get
what
one
these
that's at
people
least
are going to do.
Partially on our side.
At least for the big ones.
At least for now.
Regardless of what happens. These need to be dealt with.
And like I said, and if Trump fucks it up and turns out they've been playing us and he gets in there
and
does nothing
completely abandon him.
You turn your back on him.
Don't cut him any slack. Just, that's it. He's
done.
Don't
do it like people go like, well, he's a Republican, so we better stand up for
just
him.
like all the other politicians are done. Moving on to the next one.
We're gonna support wholeheartedly everyone that does what America needs to be done, and we're gonna scorch the fucking earth around everybody who does not. You know, like it's just what it has to be now.
Exactly. That's the only way to the country's going to survive, and that's not hyperbole. Obviously, we're not talking about the next 3 years.
We don't need to survive because there won't be any landmass left in America.
20 years, the country as we know it won't survive.
We know because of history that within the next 100 to 300 years, America will not be what it once was. Right?
Good or bad.
Good or bad.
Be the same.
It just won't be the same.
Yeah.
We can fight now to make sure it's something we are proud of and can live with.
Right.
But
we can tell it just from history that it's not going to be the same as it is now in 20 years.
Right. But I'm saying,
good
like,
or bad.
People like to imagine that the 50 states and all these things is like that's America. It's like it wasn't always so.
And it's
not even for the majority of America's lifetime.
Right. Yeah.
Have the parts of America that have been America been America?
Yeah. It's been fluid the whole time. Like things have been changing constantly.
Right.
So
and Rome itself spent more years in its decline and in its buildup than it ever did in its peak.
One of the big questions is not like what are we going to do or what should we do for the next few changes in this country. It's more who's going to be making these decisions.
Right.
And when you just have people from all these other countries, regardless of whether you think that's good or bad, they will be making the decisions then.
Yeah, because if there's more of them,
if you're okay with
democracy,
if you're okay with people from other countries making the decision about the direction of your country, then support immigration.
Right.
But if you're not, if you think Americans should be, then...
And a lot of people don't think that way because they just think of this all one human family stuff. It sounds mean. And it's like, well, you do realize you're not going over there just, you're not flooding their country and saying how they should do it, right?
Right.
So you just can't even think about how it's bad then. If it would be bad for you to take all of your community, go to Mexico and start demanding they do it your way.
What's they always talk about, which is like white man's bird type shit. They always think colonialism is bad.
Right.
What the hell's the difference?
Yeah, it's just being done by
votes
different colors
instead of armies.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly. Or it's just
still an invasion.
And when it's also the same thing, you're displacing a way of life with another, and they like to decry it when certain societies.
Because they have a certain just latent hate and for white culture.
Yeah,
and Western culture, even not even just white, but Western.
I get it.
That's
now.
why they don't care.
I hate
like
white culture now, but
well, it's just Western.
because
it's just Western cultures get so.
Because it's got so spineless and stupid and
self-destructive,
it's self-abasing of all of its previous glories. Everything that made it good, it now decries. It doesn't realize that all of this quote unquote tolerance came from these. Christian ideas about fairness, that even the king should answer to God and therefore treat his people well.
Right.
And
there's also just the magic dirt theory that they see the success of these Western countries and they want to share it with everyone. Which in and of itself is not a bad. I mean, that's a very altruistic kind of feeling.
But they
the
totally
point
misunderstand how it
came about. It wasn't just because. So when you start changing it to be like every other country, then you're going to get results like every other country's had.
Right.
And all the other countries that are not as successful as the Western countries.
Right.
It's not magic, you know, like it's not even a value statement. You can love Mexican culture a lot more.
It has its price, you know, like
Right.
the economic virtues of the Western societies meant that a lot of them have a lot more strict ways of life than other countries. You know what I mean? Like you have, like it was way frowned upon if you had a siesta. Well, yeah, of course. Then it made a lot more economic sense. But a lot of people died in factories in the West. You know, like spent every day of their life working.
Right.
And a lot of people don't like that. I get it. You know,
that's sort of the things that built.
But at the same time, like, you know, I think that's something we can get away from. Like I think,
especially now with technology.
Right. Like people have not caught up with the technological aspects of our economy.
Right.
They still advocate this work hard like an American. It's like, you know why we built fucking backhoes and robots?
Yeah, so you don't have to.
So you don't have to get 20 guys pulling a block with ropes.
Right.
You know, like, and so yes, laziness breeds nothing. You run out. So you can't be lazy, but at the same time, we built labor-saving devices for a reason.
Right.
Let's make our lives better
so
and not just harp on ourselves.
Or get even more done.
Right, because that's the problem now. It's like now that you have computers and all the stuff that cut down the amount of time it takes to do something, if you sit down for a second, they're like, why aren't you doing anything?
Right.
Well, because I already did it.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a device that lets me do it in 5 minutes versus
Instead
50
of being happy
hours.
that you could do the same thing in an hour instead of 10 hours, they still want you working for 10 hours. If you're like, wait, wasn't it okay to get that done before? Like, why do I have to get more done now?
Right, yeah, that's what.
But anyways, that's kind of a tangent.
That's a big tangent.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's just a case. What it ties back to is just that people have not caught up their way of thinking with
what's
the realities.
capable with like modern technology and
well, not just that, but just the realities of the situation. It goes back to like people don't realize why we have the prosperities we have, and they think it's because we're holding out on other people or something,
or that we've oppressed them.
And it's like they don't recognize like certain situations like India, where like they kind of brought some of that prosperity to India, and you know how they did it by conquering them.
Yeah.
And so it came with some bad shit. They had to run up to these people, subjugate them, and then get them on a modern economy.
Right, exactly.
And yes, it brought them a modern economy, but then they also had the rightful thing of, you know what, we're being
just
ruled by other
people. Just like if you say
people.
you could go into a, like we can eliminate mad cow disease in this fucking village, but the only way to do it is to stop them from doing their traditional right of eating the dead bodies of their relatives. So I mean, like, you whether thinking it's good or bad, it just is.
Right.
That's the consequences. The change is part of their culture.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
exactly my point. Like they don't.
But then now we're in a situation where we don't have mad cow disease and it's not a problem. It's sort of like saying, I mean, this isn't happening. It's just an example. Right. Like, let's let them do we'll bring it in. It's cool. Everyone can do their own cultural thing. It's like, you realize why we don't have mad cow disease, right?
Because we're not doing
that. Not doing those things.
Right.
And so there's economic mad cow disease and cultural mad cow disease in these other areas. And we don't have it because we're not doing the things that cause it.
Right. Or that don't prevent it.
Or that don't prevent
like we
it.
take the steps to prevent it versus other people don't value
and that's
that
not necessarily good or bad unless you think the mad cow disease is good or bad.
Right.
If you value the cultural rituals as being more important than the curing the disease, then make your decisions accordingly. But you can't argue the cause and effect.
Right, exactly. You can't say that they're not related when they scientifically are.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
and there's
like
certain ways that
you would consider that a fair
cultural
price
and economic outcomes for all sorts of group decision-making processes, and that's what we're seeing here. And they're different in different countries. They're different in different racial groups.
And that's what, again, when we come back to what I said before, like, you know, that's why the best thing for everybody, I think, is peaceful nationalism. You know, where like Mexico gets to have as many siestas. And
nationalism, in a way, you could boil it down to just the simple fact that you're admitting that there's different decisions.
That's why it's a hated word these days. Because everybody automatically
like we always say, they bake in the value statement to all of it.
When else, it's, you know, like, I don't want the rest of the world to be like America. I really don't. Some people think, like, we need to export democracy.
And I don't want America to be like the rest of the world.
But exactly. I don't want America to be like the rest of the world.
I like that there's different, just like with the States and
everything else. If I travel to Britain, I want it to be different.
I don't want people to give up their culture and their countries.
Right.
You know, I don't care what their culture is, but I want to have, you know, our culture here, too.
Right, exactly. You know, and that's what gets frustrating is because, like, people... And it all comes down to, it's just like,
some cultures are going to have different
disorder.
results. Some are going to have, they're not going to have that like 40-hour a week, you know, and that may be very desirable for some people, but that's a side effect of it. You can't, like, they're trying to like...
That's why you vacation in the tropics.
Right, exactly.
Because it's not as tied up in work. Or
maybe end up moving there one day, but just these mass migrations because like one particular aspect of certain cultures right now is that some are being prosperous, and that's what's really appealing to the others. And sure, there's examples of companies or even countries taking advantage of others, but that's not really what we're talking about here.
Right? Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Of course, you can always try to play the blame game and be like, well, yeah, a lot of white wealth or Western wealth is because of these advantages they took. It's like, yeah, but every empire's wealth has done that.
Right.
And just because some people did it wrong doesn't mean you punish everybody.
Or destroy
it doesn't justify another evil.
Yeah, exactly. Of just destroying. And it would even make more sense if they admitted that or knew that's what they were saying. If they're like, you know what? This was built incorrectly, let's tear it down. But that's not really what they're saying.
No.
They're saying they should be able to eliminate the base that built it up, but still have the building stay standing.
Exactly. Like, your machine is robbing people and giving others money. They don't say it's wrong and gotta stop. They say I want the controls.
Right. Give me the control of this machine. I'll make it proper.
Now, speaking of that, this gives me another story that I saw recently. There was a story about the hotel industry.
Okay.
And Airbnb. For those who don't know, Airbnb is a site kind of like Uber, where somebody just made a site where people can go sell their personal wares on it, but you can rent out spare rooms.
Yeah, you rent out
like a vacation home, or like people who like
yourself. You're not through property managers. You just go on there, and anyone who
owns a spare room, like as just a student or a mom or something,
beach house or whatever,
or a full-on property owner who has like apartments. But it's typically not apartment style. You're not renting out a room.
They're all vacation. Usually.
They're vacation style. But let's say you own a vacation house yourself.
A lot of them are like,
which you
don't have a house in Key West. You use it 2 weeks a year.
Right. The rest of the year you rent it out.
Yeah.
Okay, and you can manage it and sell it through Airbnb. Well, the hotel industry is mad about it because even though the hotel industry has apparently been growing over the past couple of years, despite the economic slowdown,
that's hurting.
Sort of thing, they're mad because it just like so many businesses, they say we have this much loss, meaning we project we could have made this much more without our competitors being in the way. Which is not a loss, really, you dumb assholes.
Like we thought we were going to make $50,000 extra, we only made $1,000 extra.
So
we lost $49,000.
Right, exactly. Like, I have an accountant that justified his job by saying we could make this much more if we got rid of our competition. Like, well, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. Okay.
Okay, but
and
anyway,
I could have all the women in the world if I was the last man.
What
on
was
Earth.
so like face palming about it? Yeah, exactly. What was so face palming about it is they were, of course, trying to go into court and argue that these guys were running illegal hotels because they were not facing certain taxes and stuff and inspections that the hotel industry had to.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, fair enough. But you know what the problem is? This was your chance to say they're not wearing chains, so take them off us.
Right.
Instead of saying put them on in chains too.
Yeah, say we shouldn't have to pay taxes on the Airbnb stuff that we do either, or something like that.
Right, yeah. So, like, the problem is that the big companies actually like regulation, and this is something
because they already have that position of power where they can handle the burden of the regulation.
They can crush entrepreneurs by making the regulations too hard to get in the door because they're already in.
Yeah, because if you make the regulations such that you have to have a company pass a certain threshold to manage it, then it automatically eliminates making it up.
They already have millions of dollars in lawyers to throw around.
They've already got.
But they know their competitor, the small
compliance offices and all that stuff.
The next upstart will not.
Won't be able to.
Won't be able to afford that many lawyers to.
Or even to have like a lawyer on staff or a person just working on all this.
The average person, like I guarantee you, the guys who made Airbnb, even if they had several $100,000 or $1 million in startup capital, did not have like a lawyer on staff at all times to handle this shit. They might now because now they've made millions of dollars, but. Before like when these guys are in their basement figuring out how to do like the next Apple computer style thing, where they're
Uber or whatever.
They're in their basement, or in a rented office space, figuring out how to build their company. They don't have $1 million to throw just at the legal department.
Right. So that's interesting.
Whereas the big people do, and so they want to keep it a fight that you always got to go through a legal battle to even play the game because they can shut out competitors that way.
Right.
And people think that that's. Free market when it's not. It's still using the legal system to stifle pure market forces.
One thing that that's what I was just going to say is that, like we were talking about right before the show, is that I don't even like it when people use the term free market.
It's a loaded term.
Well, because they use it in the same way they use it as when they say that they're really saying the belief that markets are better without government intervention. Right. When I say free markets, I'm talking about, I don't even say it anymore, I say market forces.
Right.
Because I'm not talking about wanting a free market the same way I would talk about socialism, capitalism, all this. I'm not talking about the belief system. I'm talking about the normal cause and effect, real world forces that exist, regardless of what you think.
It's the difference between physics and big S science that everyone makes these days. Because if I talk about physics, i.e. market forces in your example, I'm talking about the mechanisms that affect things and how they work.
Yeah, I'm talking about the force
versus
that this,
the people
I'm
talk about
force
science.
that this box exerts on the the universe and what it would take to lift it, not which shelf it should go on.
Right, yeah. Versus the people who talk about free market or science.
It's like, what should you do with this box?
With this that has their own ideology baked into it.
Or why you should lift it, not how is it lifted.
Right, exactly. And so now, of course, I tend much more towards the free market people's ideas.
Of course I do, but when you have to be able to talk about the ideas in the correct way.
To be clear about what you're talking about, it's not always helpful to say free market, because like there's a lot of people whom I respect and whom I listen to all the time, but they always say, yeah, but free markets. And it's like, okay, like I agree with you, like stop using that, because all you're talking about right then is
Instead use the term market forces and government intervention.
Right, yeah.
Don't even say free market.
Right, like I mean...
Say natural market forces and government intervention.
Because, what we're talking about here is like people have elevated everything to an ideology like free markets as if it's a god, and it's like an atheist talking about it. They say, well, the free market says... When did it say it?
Yeah.
Who is the free market that it said this?
Yeah.
Or like the free market
when
dictates...
When they should say natural market forces normally cause
It's the same problem with science. They say science tells us.
Right.
When?
Yeah, who?
I didn't know science spoke today.
I didn't get that tweet from science.
Science didn't tweet me and let me know that it said this. Like, oh, science made it dictate? Thank God science has spoken. I mean, thank science
or
it has
science
spoken.
tells us this. Yeah.
Right, yeah. It's like, no. Our study of the universe, now I get it. It's shorthand. Human beings like to...
But not anymore. That's the problem. That's not what it means to everyone every time.
They've become loaded terms, so we can't use the shorthand anymore.
Right, so you have to explain
because
what you're
in
really
reality,
saying.
what you should be saying, if you're honest, is the study of the universe has revealed that this is how electrons work. Not science tells us electrons
Our current model of the universe
Our current model of the universe has an understanding which is 90% accurate in most tests.
Or so far has been infallible. Yeah.
Right, yes. So far has covered every test we have thrown at it, but it could be wrong.
Right, but now when someone says science, it could be talking about a journal. They could be talking about the profession of teaching, the scientific method. They could be talking about the scientific method itself. Like,
it's exactly the same when they're talking about science and the free market stuff to a lesser extent. Science does this a lot more. The people who talk about science do this a lot more.
Science.
But they say, it's like saying,
not religion.
It's like saying the Catholic Church tells us is what is how they're using it.
Right.
And at least if somebody says the Catholic Church tells us, that's more honest, because you're pointing to a body of people making decisions based off reading a certain text.
They don't even know that they're looking at science.
Exactly.
Just like
they don't realize they're using it
it
as an authority source for an ideological. It is their God figure, but because they don't believe in a God figure, it's a nebulous nirvana.
And because in a lot of ways, the study of the universe is the way that yields truth that we know about things.
At least the physical truth.
That's what I mean. So then, to them, it's like, what do you mean? It's not a religion. This stuff is true. And like, yeah, there are truths out there. So say that. Say that our study of the universe has discovered this truth.
But I mean, like saying, you could do it the other way. You could say mountains are like you base a philosophy around the shape of mountains and what we know about mountains, and it's the same exact thing. Mountains are steep, therefore we must do this. It's like they're not necessarily related. Just because the physical aspect of something is known and we have a system that has derived it and we call it science,
are way too.
It doesn't add any moral factors to it.
People nowadays don't know how to separate the known from like their value statements about what should be done with that information.
Right.
You know what I mean? They're just like, this information tells us that, like, no, this information is this information. It just is.
This goes back to what I was saying earlier. Then you need to say,
because of this, I think this.
Right. This goes back to what I was saying earlier off recording too, which I'll bring back here. Is like, there's like 3 levels to everything that people conflate them all and don't understand.
If they even use it.
There's the level of just how things work in the universe, physics. So
the truth of the universe.
The truth of the universe on a factual level.
Just like how it works.
Material.
Literally how it works.
Literally how it works on a material level.
Right.
Then there is...
We're talking about stuff like gravity all that physical
math,
stuff. Natural human psychology. Even if we don't really know what it is, it's there.
Right, it's there.
There are truths about these things.
There are the truths about the physical universe and our physical bodies and, the aggregate ways that people behave and stuff like that.
All these truths,
Then there is the truths of just the particular system that you have. Like, for example, if you have a gun, here's how a gun works. The gun works on the principles in the first category, physics, explosions, expanding gases. Those things drive the operation of a gun. Then there's the mechanical nature of that system itself, how that system works. Then there's the moral nature of what should you do with this gun.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what's it for? Why should you use it?
When you should and should not use it.
Right, and that's all. People like just merge them. They can't talk about the first two.
Like if I talk about how a gun works,
automatically working in there. Like,
if I talk about how physics works to make gas expand and how that allows a gun to work and to cycle a feed system for a belt, they go, but guns are evil. It's like, that's irrelevant to my discussion.
It's sort of. I mean, exactly. And what happened is you say something like. They'll say something like, "Oh, you shouldn't kill." I don't know. Anyways, I think a better example is what Vox said. I was trying to work the gun analogy into it still, but I couldn't figure out a way. But where he said that because he was talking about immigration, and he was talking about how people say you can't deport X number of people, and he's like, yes, you can. The Nazis deported 5 times that many.
Right.
And like, you think it's okay that the Nazis... Like, oh my God. He's talking about the gun. You're saying the gun can't exist. He's like, no, it has existed. Look over here.
Someone has used it
And you're saying,
already.
like, you shouldn't do it. Like, that's not even part of what he was saying.
Those are 2 separate questions.
There's 2 separate questions. You're merging the
It's
levels.
like one man looking at the way the universe works and saying, I could build a backhoe.
Right.
And somebody else going, you shouldn't dig up poor people's houses or
you're
knock
like,
them down like with this bulldozer. It's like, I'm not talking about what I will do with the bulldozer. I'm saying it's possible to build a bulldozer.
Right, exactly.
You know,
that's what he's saying. Like, he wasn't saying who should or shouldn't be deported with this particular statement. He was saying that it's possible to deport X number of people in X amount of time.
So that's
demonstrated by an actual historical example.
That's something you got to look at when you're talking to people and realize that most people cannot get past rhetorical.
Yeah.
So they're stuck on
the pseudo-dialectic.
The pseudo-dialectic, and they're stuck on, like I said, that moral level, but it's not even a correct moral level. Because they're not even looking at it from a true understanding of philosophy and all the arguments about what is and isn't right and what isn't the nature of truth that have gone on for thousands of years. And you'll see this with
people who agree with you, too, that are still conflating the two.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's a lot of people have that sort of psychological bias.
So you just need to be aware of that so that you can, A, cut through it, and so that you could be...
You can better formulate your own worldview without being stuck in that mindset of just like always being worried about the value statement. Like, no, you need to first figure, before you even worry about who you should be shooting or
you have
why,
to know that a gun is possible.
You have to know and how and
how
why
it
it's
works.
working. Because then you can build your whole... It's a pyramid. You can't
now,
have the upper level without
life,
having
the difficulty is, for most of life...
There's going to be
the
gaps
moral question...
Well,
I mean... Just from a pure knowledge perspective, not everything. For most of life, the moral question is the important one. Because you need to know... Like, for example, back to the gun analogy... Most people do not know the physics of how a gun works except on a rudimentary level.
Right.
And they could not build a gun if you left them a workshop.
Right.
You know? But they can take a gun and use it for good or ill. So they need to be trained in the moral aspect.
And it also allows it for them to be a lot easier to focus on the moral, the top tier of the pyramid, the moral aspect, because that's what they face every day. Right. They don't face the realities of the mechanics of a gun or the physics of the universe.
Right. But the problem is a lot of these ideas that are in the debate these days are addressing that second level.
Or they're basing the moral decision on something that is just opposed to the actual physical realities of the universe.
Like socialism and stuff like that.
And you don't have to think that it's even a bad idea to say that, like if they say, like, we're gonna, if the moral decision is to shoot someone 30 miles away, you don't have to think that's a wrong decision to be like, hey, guns can't shoot 30 miles away.
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, why are you saying this guy's evil? He needs to die.
Well,
like,
I have a better
I'm not saying
example.
you're wrong. Guns cannot shoot. You have to understand the physical model of the universe.
Right.
They can't shoot 30 miles away.
And I have a better example. Is like back to the whole socialism thing. Like, people like to say, well, don't you want everybody to be fed? It's like, yes.
Yeah,
the problem is there's no magic button that makes it happen.
What I want makes no difference to whether it's possible. I want the guy 30 miles away to be shot. I'm not going to shoot him. That's too far. It doesn't work.
I can't make that shot.
That shot is impossible.
I have no magic button that makes broccoli appear every time somebody's hungry.
And so, that's a lot of the problems with somebody like Bernie Sanders is that his ideas, regardless of how altruistic they may be, they fail that test. You know what I mean?
So that's the problem. Is we got a lot of people stuck on this, like, but isn't this goal morally good? Sure.
Who cares? Yeah.
Who cares?
That's not
it can't be done.
Exactly.
So let's find a version that both can be done.
Or if it
and
is done, it has based on the real rules of the universe and the real
consequences. It has not addressed it.
Exactly, and that's the problem. Is that they can, a lot of these can sort of be done. You know, they're not an impossibility like the 30-mile shot where you can like just try it and it just doesn't work and you have to move on. They can sort of get some of the things that they're looking for, but
you
they
can get halfway to a socialist utopia, but there's a lot of blood in the foundation.
Understanding how the system works. It'd be sort of like, I guess a better example would be using a gun in a way that eventually destroys it. Like, yes, you can shoot 600 people a minute, but not for 35 minutes, because then the gun self-destructs.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean?
But
they're like, no, I am. For 3 minutes, I've just shot that many. And like, I understand, but if you know the gun and you know the rules of the universe, this is going to fail.
It's going to melt the barrel and slag the whole object.
Exactly, and then it's done. Then you're not shooting anyone anymore.
Right,
and that's what's happened. That's the Bernie Sanders system, is this burn it up, slag the whole system. And that's why he's my second choice. Is because
back full circle, burn the system.
Slag it up.
If we can't trump over our enemies, we must burn the system.
Yeah, just burn the motherfucker down.
That sounds like a good place to stop from our little quip there.
Yeah.
Trump over our enemies or burn the system.
Right. This has been the English Singers podcast.
And it's apparently our political-centric one for today.
Exactly.
So
it's an auspicious time.
We will link the hilarious video in the comment section below, or the show notes section below. Be sure to like us on both SoundCloud and the YouTube channel. And we appreciate all you guys listening out there. Adios.